You know, walleye anglers have to be really versatile, but if I had to narrow down that versatility to one strength, I would have to say that it's my versatility is my strength. And the reason for that is that I've always tried to work on my imperfections, not so much my personality or my spirituality as much as, but yeah, I mean everything about me as a human, about me as a father, is about me as, you know, my fishing. What am I weak at? I don't know how many times I've left a body of water and was just upset that I didn't have one more day to stay there and work on tactics. I can remember back 6-7 years ago, I got my tail whooped at Fort Peck. I went out the next day with somebody that knew what they were doing, and we went and pulled spinners. Same thing with rigging. I went out with Dan Steer on Mille Lacs one year after the tournament was over, and we went out and rigged for a day. And it was phenomenal. Just, I figured out what I was doing wrong. I figured out what I had to tweak and what I had to change. But versatility is my strength. I try to be as versatile as possible. And if I have a weakness, I want to find that weakness and weed it out. My perfect walleye scenario would probably be to get into a slugfest on vertical jigging fish when they're pounding a really, really light jig. And what I mean by that, I pretty much hit that stride when I was fishing on the PWT event, the last one they've ever had, on the St. Croix/Mississippi River Pool 3. I was back in the sloughs and the cuts. I was jigging with a jig head and using a Berkeley Gulp minnow piggybacked with a fathead minnow. And the profile matched a shad, and it was exactly what they wanted at exactly the right time and exactly the right place. I had the dabble, and I was rocking, and they were thumping it. So to me, that is perfect. When you know you're on them and you can't refine that tactic any more than what you already have, and the fish are saying, give me some. Well, you know, it'd be just like if you're afraid to be associated with the PGA because professional was in the Professional Golfers Association title. I'm the most terrible golfer in the world, but because my dad loves to golf, I'm a member of the PGA, so I can get a handicap, and he can feel better that he's got like a 16 or a 15 handicap, and I've got like a 38. Sorry, Dad, if I'm off there a little bit, but I'm not off on mine. The last time I golfed, in fact, I shot a 4 under. A 4 under 100. But in any event, you know, professionalism is what we're striving for. And, you know, it's for everybody that fishes tournaments or believes in the fishing industry from the standpoint of we want to be more professional, the guys that are making a full-time living on it. Also, we and the guys that are fishing, I believe, want to be more professional if they're moving through the ranks. And we also believe that there is another entity within not the PGA, but the NPAA, that in the National Professional Anglers Association, there's a bunch of people that want to support it by being a member, but they're never, ever going to strive or don't want to be a professional angler that has to sacrifice a lot of time on the road, loading and unloading your truck, washing the Ranger, making sure that you're propping the Evinrude right and getting down the road with what they're doing. So in the NPAA, it's basically for anybody that wants to preserve or protect what we've got going on. I'm not a radical handgun owner or anything like that, but I own a lot of guns and I own some handguns, and I believe in the NRA. You know, I'm not a trapper, but I believe that furs or fur-bearing animals were meant to be enjoyed, pursued, and worn, not just killed and thrown away, but utilized. And especially, you know, there's some people that love to eat raccoons, so if you can wear the hide and eat the meat, you know, you're using a resource that God put on this earth. And I'm part of, you know, the Trappers Association. So, you know, we protect by supporting what we believe in. And I believe that anybody that believes in what the NPA believes in, which is raising professionalism and growing the fishing industry and supporting tournament fishing and fishing in general, should all be a part of the NPAA. I do a lot of piggybacking with gulp and live bait. A lot of times I'll piggyback gulp and gulp. I use a lot. One of my trade secrets that I'm sharing for the first time right now on the next bite is to use a 4-inch gulp minnow. And then on top of that, I do what's called the double decker when I do both gulp. I'll put a 3-inch minnow. So you got the 4-inch on the bottom, the 3-inch on the top. Sometimes you got to shear down that 3-inch gulp minnow. But that double decker approach, it actually helps me and catches a lot of fish. When I put a minnow on it, that's a term, the piggyback, and I actually believe is a term that was coined by P&K. And it was something where you use gulp and use a live bait product, or they use it probably 2 gulp shapes in tandem. But I'd like to differentiate that. I'll give them credit for piggyback, but the double decker is when you use both of one species. You know, a lot of times the advantage of using half artificial and half live bait, or using artificial is, for me, it's a profile thing. I'm trying to stack up 2 gulp shapes, or gulp and a minnow, or a gulp and a crawler, to give the bait a little bit more vertical profile, to shad out a bait or bluegill out a bait as we would have it. The minnow would be on there if I needed a little bit more wiggle and jiggle while I let the jig head rest on the bottom. And you think to yourself, well, why don't you just shake it like a bass guy does and get away from the live bait? Well, sometimes it's nice to have live bait on a jig. If I'm fishing a fuzzy grub and I'm going to tip it with a minnow, you know, I've got the scent and the appeal of the grub body with the marabou tail. Squirt some power juice in there, or some of the new gulp formula you can spray on now. Garlic's my favorite. And then you put that minnow on, and when it sits on the bottom and it wiggles, it attracts the fish in. If you were to move that jig head, and especially in current, you might get that jig to roll or shake underneath a limb, a branch, a rock, and that's, you know, you're snagging up more often than not. Another reason that I'll oftentimes use a minnow is there ain't nothing like the real thing, baby, sometimes. And with that gulp, it's got the scent and attraction that you need to hold on to it, but the minnow will add another element with the shine and the sheen and the, what I would call the holographic effect of that minnow's side. So, you know, if they made gulp with holographic on it, which I believe we're working on, don't tell nobody, but if they made gulp with some holographics in it, it might be a reason to get rid of minnows altogether. My favorite fishing lines for vertical jigging are gonna specifically be if I'm in any type of water where I don't think the fish are going to see the presentation. I directly tie to my jig head or fuzzy grub head fire line in 8.3 pound test, or 8-pound test with a 3-pound diameter, or I'll use spider wire stealth in the bright green colors. You know, I see that flick on the line, I'll feel it. Now, if the fish are a little bit more subtle than that, if I need a little bit of stretch, then I'm going to be vertical jigging either with sensation in the solar color, or if visibility, I think, is a factor, which a lot of times on clear bodies of water with no current, like Mille Lacs and some of your other northern pristine waters that have no tannin stain in them, I'm going to want to use a Trilene XL in either moss green or in clear. And then that'll give me the advantage that I need. But you know, in order to get through the current, in order to get your jig down to deeper depths and use a lighter head, a lot of times my biggest preference is going to be that flame green fire line, or the other super line, which is spiderware stealth. Now with super lines, the biggest problem with super lines is you got to keep retying. And what I'm really excited about this year, because I use super lines so much with jigging, is Lindy's got a new product out called the Lindy Exchange System, to where you can actually change jig heads and colors and sizes without having to retie the jig. So I can go from a 16th all the way up to a 3/8, and I've got, I think, 20 some different colors at my disposal. I figured it's well over 100 different color combinations and size combinations in order to give the fish what they want, when they want it, at the depth they want it.